Hey guys, Jeff here, and today we are going to ride the struggle bus. Vector Potential has hit 100 subscribers and has asked for us to take about 15 minutes, I think he said, to just basically tackle and talk through a lock we've been struggling with. And for anybody who has followed me and especially read my comments in any of the lives that I'm on, Illinois Duo. This sucker has plagued me ever since I started working on it. Oh, I think I started working on it seriously like a year and a half ago. And a few months ago, I made a new tensioner. And that seemed to help, kind of. But we're just going to see what we can do here. So this is the tensioner I made out of a spoon handle. I used to make spoon rings, so I have a lot of spoon handles around. I was able to make this to give me a pretty good grip because this I got at a garage sale and it has been chewed all to crap, and so any other regular tensioners just don't hold in there well. This one's not even perfect, but it gives me more grip than top of keyway or bottom of keyway or anything like that. I'm also using my homemade steak knife tensioner for most of this. Now, everyone has told me, set those side wafers first. But I cannot, I think I'm finding them, I'm not sure. I have such a hard time finding them and feeling them in here. And I should also say, I have had this open a handful of times. The last time I opened it, I think, has been at least 3 months ago. Of course, I've never been recording during any of those. All right, so working the bottom wafers, flip over. Now, one of the problems I found I have is when I try to get the top wafers, I am levering too much, and I'm still knocking even this tensioner out. So I got to be very careful and deliberate. I know that one of them in the back there is often missed. Just watch. It'll be wild if this is my intention for Vector Potential's struggle bus, where he wants us to pick and talk through for like 15 minutes. Wouldn't it be wild if I got this open in like 5 minutes? All right, back to the bottom. Now, the reason that everyone says to set the side wafers first is I've heard that if you can set the side wafers first, it's impossible, or so people say, to overset the top and bottom wafers. So I think I've got most of those set, and more importantly, by setting those as I have more space in here now to actually get to my side wafers. All right. The other thing I've heard with the Duo is that if you're making progress, it's almost like a false set where it's slowly inching around. And I think, I don't know if you can tell, it's definitely cranked over a little bit more than it was at the beginning. Oh, that felt like some sort of set. This is what I've done for months. It's just poke around. Try to find something that'll progress the false set around, and always fighting to keep my tensioner in. I feel like there's one towards the back in the top here that I often miss. I feel like the last time I got it open, I finally found the right wafer back there to tap. We'll say I've been doing this so much, you can see the line right now. I've heard it's a bad habit to hold like this, but that's what I've been doing to try to keep from knocking this out. I've actually started getting a bit of a callus and even sometimes being sore right there on my middle finger from working on this. I'd love to get this lock finished so it could be one of them in my path to a purple belt. And I have the feeling that once I finish this lock, this one is just going to kind of hang in a spot of honor. that it will not be messed with again. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not saying I hate duos. I'm saying this one particular one has become a thorn in my side. I'd actually love if I was ever able to get a hold of a fresh duo. Nice and crispy feedback, I would expect. All right, we're going to check the side wafers again. A keyway that's actually holds on to a tensioner well. All right. One of the first things that ever made a difference for me, the first time I ever got this open, I was actually chatting with Lady Locks. I think we were emailing or something. And as many of you might remember from her earlier videos, she loves the monkey paw. She said, well, just try changing it up. So we'll do that right now. We'll change over to the monkey paw. It helps me kind of be on the wafers a little bit better, but it also doesn't have quite as much reach on it, I don't think. And so I feel like if I'm not careful, I'm setting other wafers with it. So it's a mixed bag. The steak knife pick, kitchen knife pick, has been the one that I have gotten most of my opens with. But the very first open was definitely because Lady Luck said, you've got a monkey paw. Try it, just to change things up. I'll be, if that very first time, literally as soon as I got that message from her, I said, I don't know how it could make a difference. I pulled it out, did just a little more poking around with it, and it opened right up for me. Also worth sharing the background of this lock, how I have a duo that's just chewed all up, and also worth noting, I don't have the key for it. In my early days of lock sport, that was a good little bit of a false set, I guess we'll call it there. In my early days of lock sport, many of you guys know I've always been, nice folks would say thrifty. I would say cheap. But in my days before I was even on YouTube, I might have just lost everything. I was at a garage sale and they had some padlocks. But thrifty as I am, when they had like $3 or $5 on an individual padlock, I said, that's just too much for me. But knowing how we are, I asked, I said, do you happen to have any, because they had a big stack of padlocks. I said, do you have any padlocks without keys that you'd want to get rid of pretty cheap? They gave me kind of a funny look, as most people do, especially when we still haven't figured out how to, at that point especially, I didn't know how to talk to people about lock sport, just, I'm interested in old locks. And so, lady came back out, had a box of locks, mostly ones like Master Lock, laminated and similar. And she said, how about 50 cents a piece for the lot? And I hadn't even really looked through them, but no, 50 cents for a lock, that is my kind of price. So it wasn't until I got home that I realized that this Illinois Duo was in the mix, and I was still very much a white belt picker at that point. I had no clue what I even had on my hands here. And so it wasn't until a while later that I even started seeing videos of it and being like, wait a second, that's my lock? So I didn't have the slightest clue. I think I eventually figured out that it was a wafer lock, but I didn't have the slightest clue that it had those side wafers in it. And so it just sat for years due to my cluelessness, not even knowing what it was called, how to look it up, or figure out anything about it. The thing about this lock is that so many times, I feel like it does about 3 of those little false sets for me. I feel like so many times I've gone through 2 of those false sets. And I feel like I'm close. Like I just need, there's just one more thing. I feel like it's bottom front way for a lot of times. And so a lot of times I'll say, I'm just going to do, maybe 5 minutes on this lock. Next thing I know, I've spent half an hour cramping up. I will say that having the lock chuck, the lock chuck vise has definitely made it a little bit easier for me, so I'm not having to death grip it like I used to. But still, all the tension, speaking of tension, don't fly out, please, thank you. Maybe that's my problem. You guys should tell me. Do you use a lot of tension or a little bit of tension up here? I feel like, this is definitely not light tension. But if I'm not tensioning it pretty heavily, my tensioner wants to fly out. I'm already getting very much worn out at this. I did some picking earlier today just to kind of make sure that, some days you've got the feel, some days you don't. And so I did American 1100 and some others like that just to kind of warm up. I even, on a whim, pulled out my 98 Pro, and I actually got that picked. But I wanted to practice this, but I told myself if I'm going to be picking on it for at least 15 minutes, I didn't want to practice ahead of time. I'll tell you what, the bicep on this side, I will admit part of it is because of the way I'm having to reach around the camera. Someday I'll have a different setup maybe, and I won't have to reach around the camera. But there's so much of me that is starting to ache right now. At this point, I feel like an open is quite unlikely. So a few more pokes with the monkey paw before we just call this defeat. But I think vector potential, this should definitely count for the struggle bus, because holy crap, does this lock make me struggle. I don't know, maybe my prongs are too long. Maybe I'm actually locking up the front wafers with my tensioner. If any of you have any suggestions, I have heard a lot of the suggestions over the years. I've been able to try most of them. But I welcome suggestions because I would love to get this guy on camera open. Especially after that live recently where we were talking about it in Lady Locks. It's like, what do you mean you struggle with the Duo? Didn't I see you open it? No, I think, as I really think back, lady, I think it's very much the fact that you received a picture of it open the very first time I ever opened it, which was maybe 2 years ago. All right. And we just lost all that progress. So yeah, that is definitely going to count for our struggle bus. I do want to see if I can before we finish here. Try to bring some light in so you can see how rounded off the corners are inside there, which is why I've gone for this spoon handle tensioner. This is not the end. I will continue to work with it. Eventually, I will finally get this thing open. But for now, that's a defeat. The Struggle Bus 100 for Vector Potential. Again, congratulations, Vector, on getting so close to 100 subscribers. Wish you all the best. All right, a little postscript for you guys. Clearly, sometimes you just have to change things up. I spent maybe, I don't know, another 5-10 minutes after I cut the camera. I took it out of the vise, moved it to my hand like I used to do. I said, let's give up on this tensioner. I moved to a specific wiper. I have a wiper insert that I use for most of my tensioning, but there seems to be a little bit of difference in the width. This one bites better, but also I think the flex lets me... I think it's like the feather light tensioners I've seen before. But dagnabbit if it didn't actually work. The reassurance that I needed that I can, in fact, pick this lock. And I did use both the kitchen knife pick and the monkey paw along with this. So I got it picked. I know it still doesn't count for purple belt because I didn't freaking do it on camera, but I was running out of memory and I had to cut somewhere. So one of these days I'll finally get it on camera. Thank you to everyone that supports me, that encourages me, and reminds me that, hey, it is possible. It's also really annoying that there's nothing you can do to actually gut this and see what's inside and clean it up or anything. Again, thank you to Vector Potential for encouraging me to, record the struggle. Take care, y'all.